the connection that you have in there is that losing yourself is a bad thing. But what if losing yourself was actually like the next iteration of your soul expansion? We've all come here with a divine purpose, traveling on a stream of cosmic dust from the stars into our mother's wombs, born into this precious life. It is no accident that you are here, my love, on earth, in this moment, in this body. You are here longing to find your place, to align with your purpose, to embody your passions and to live into the dreams of your heart. Yet so often we get caught, suspended in the tangle of life, not able to move forward, not able to find solace and comfort in a world that has forgotten the truth of our existence. As we begin to remember, as we peel back the layers, as we come together to uncover our unique gifts and reconnect with our authentic selves, we are able to see another way of being, a new possibility, a different life waiting to be lived. I have experienced on this complicated and wild journey of life that when we connect with the story of our soul, it will show us the magic of this life that we have been missing. It will open a window into the very heart of who we truly are, of who we came here to be, and gives us answers to our ever-asking why. Hello, my beautiful souls. Thank you for being here today, tuning in to another of our special featured guest episodes. Sophie is here with us today, bringing a beautiful topic, a vulnerable topic of grief and being vulnerable. And this is threaded through a program, right, I suppose, that is running through her, where at some point in her childhood, she made a connection between things going wrong and the universe punishing her. Anytime she steps into a bigger version of herself or makes a choice in devotion to herself, she experiences being punished. And it's quite fascinating as we untangle this and look at the way that this belief system was set up in her so many years ago, and how this has really created black and white thinking for her and ultimately kicks her into survival mode in those moments when she makes bigger choices, when she expands, when she takes something to the next level. She has this conditioning underneath that then connects things that are not connected at all, but that in her world become connected and become a punishment. We also dive into grief and how messy it is and how there is no right way to grieve. And what comes up for Sophie is how grief is not okay. She has an ancestral wound that is still playing out today around grief and about being vulnerable and about what she can and cannot do and should and shouldn't do. And it's really beautiful to witness the freedom that comes through for her. And one of the themes that keeps coming up is how much wisdom she already holds inside herself and how these wise parts of her are really in her favor and are really helping her and supporting her on this journey. So as you are listening, what stories, what equations, what patterns are you bringing together that don't belong together, that actually have no correlation, and yet somewhere inside of you, you are making A or 1 + 2 = 3 when it really doesn't? And where can you dive into that deeper to see where the freedom is for you in that, right? Where's that place of disconnection so that you can move and expand into something bigger? And if you are moving through grief, right, these are incredible times that we're living in. Do you let yourself feel big emotions? Is it okay to grieve? Is it okay to be angry? Is it okay to be sad? Or do you hide these parts? Do you tell yourself that it's not okay to feel these places and these things inside you? And in doing so, are you cutting yourself off from magic and love and joy and wisdom and goodness and all the things that live inside and underneath these bigger expressions of ourselves? Hi, Sophie. Welcome to the podcast. How can I help you today?
Hi, Sarah. So I'm feeling like whenever I do the right thing, and usually that right thing feels very hard, but I do it anyways because it feels aligned. But then in return, I feel like immediately afterwards, the universe punishes me in some way. So, for example, I recently ended a relationship with an unaligned person, but shortly after coming out of that relationship, I then found out that two people that I was very close to ended their lives. And so this has brought up a lot of grief and a lot of confusion for me as to the pattern of, me doing a hard thing, thinking I'm doing the right thing, and then some quote unquote negative consequences occur immediately after, or things out of my control. I mean, everything is out of our control, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, that's a lot to happen, sweetheart. It's hard. Just feel into that for you, okay? So, the image that's dropping in and what I see for you is, as you ended that relationship, you opened a door, a divine door, and you stepped through. And when we step through, we step into a new version of reality. We've made a choice, a big choice, and it's in devotion to something deeper within us, especially those bigger, harder choices. And they really do ripple the fabric of reality when we do that. So that's one side of it. The other part is, and I'm really curious about this part of you that then takes that and makes it about you, right? The consequences that happen, you then take them and make them about yourself. So in your example, in the way that I'm reading it, those two things are not related. You ended a relationship, you supported yourself, you made an incredible choice, you walked through a door. Then you had two friends that also walked through their own individual doors, but in a different way. And those two events for me are not linked when I look at them. Yet there's a very real part of you that links them and that brings in this energy of punishment, and that somehow there's some responsibility on your part for what happened. And I imagine if we track back through your examples, I'll see a very similar thing, that there's two things that are not related, but that a part of you is relating. So when I share that with you, I'd love to hear your reflection.
Yeah. I feel like what came up for me was when you said I walked through a door and then my friends walked through a door. I believe that we're all kind of mirrors for each other and we're all co-creating this fabric of existence. And so I don't really know why. I feel responsible, or partially responsible, for being that mirror, like whatever happens to me is also happening all around me. And it may look different, of course, but I feel maybe just this like connection and like tie to those people that ended their lives and myself just so strongly. I don't know.
When you say that, right? Like when you say you feel the connection, where's the threshold where it leaves connection and becomes responsibility?
Mm, yeah. I don't really know why I would feel responsible for these things happening, but I do, and I don't know where it comes from.
How does it show up in your other areas of your life and relationships?
I guess responsibility is kind of tied to control. And I think I definitely grew up with a parent or maybe two parents that felt a lot of responsibility towards me and would try to control me in a lot of ways. And I do notice that, unfortunately, coming up in my more intimate romantic relationships, even though it's something that I really despised growing up about being treated that way. And so now I'm kind of just laughing, but also just mad at myself that I inherited those qualities from the way my parents treated me, I guess.
So, this part of you that wants to be responsible and control, she's a very valuable part of you. I know the way that you said it, it was like, I inherited this and you don't like it. And yet, all parts of you hold wisdom. And so, when you were a child, this part of you learned to move through the world in a particular way for a particular reason. And she's still moving through the world that way today in support of you, in her deep devotion of loving you. But she's misguided, right? Like, you could use her support in a different way. So if you think about the little girl who learned how to do it this way, what does she tell you about why she does it that way?
All that's really coming up for me is that she does it because she's scared.
Anything else?
Does it because she's scared of loss. She's scared of loss.
What did she lose when she was little?
She lost her childhood bliss and innocence as she grew up, and weirdly enough, that was the first hard thing that I ever experienced in this life, you know? My childhood was just so good and so miraculous and so love and light. And then once things started to change and the hormones started to change and I was growing older and losing that light, I really, really wanted to hold on. And it was a really tough experience that I often don't think about anymore, but it does come up sometimes. And I still feel that deep sadness for her.
Mm-hmm. So, the first time you moved through something hard, you lost part of yourself, a part you were trying to hold on to, and yet didn't know how.
Yes.
So, when you were little, you made an equation. You came against something really hard. And as you were changing and shifting, you lost something, right? Hard changes, life equals losing a part of yourself that you loved, right? That was light and shiny and magical and all the things. And then you moved through this period of change and there was a loss. So, what can happen when we make equations when we're young is that those equations still play out today. So, I'm curious if that equation is showing up inside of your making a hard choice, moving through change, and then your interpretation, right? Your connection, your equation is that the universe is punishing you. So I'm curious if this is the same equation that's playing out from your childhood today.
It is. It totally is. I can't believe you made that connection, but that's like exactly the same thing. I used to be so averse to change. And because of this reason, it just made me so sad, so much grief, so uncomfortable. And I guess as I'm getting older and becoming more of an adult, the universe has more serious and more adult ways of showing up in that way, in that same pattern, but just the adult version. And I don't know how I can maybe like reframe or heal this part of me or end this cycle because it is a really painful one.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a part of you that believes that you're being punished. Like you take an action and then there's a punishment. It could be interesting and helpful to think about the times that you have done something hard and something good has happened. What examples do you have of that?
The first thing that comes to mind is finishing grad school and then being just like blessed with this super aligned opportunity for the work that I'm doing right now. That is an example of like I did something that was very difficult and then I felt like it was a bit of a cosmic reward in a sense.
Hmm. Anything else?
I'm thinking of like, I guess, big life changes. Is that kind of what I should be thinking of?
Whatever drops in for you, right? But just trying to rewire this part of you that connects big things and change to something bad happening by showing it some examples that, hey, that's not actually all the time. That does happen, yes, but the correlation that a part of your psyche has made is just misunderstood, right? It's crossed its wires. And by showing it examples of, hey, look at all these times that like actually really good things happened. It's making me think of like how we used to say, don't use the words never and always, because something is really not like they're big words. And usually we use them way out of proportion. And we're using them when we're in black and white, right? Instead of being in more that flow of recognizing that there's a lot more happening than our black and white thinking. And your brain has got caught in this black and white thinking. And by giving it something else to think about, like showing it real examples, that it's not always like this.
Yeah, totally. And that's why before our call, when you read what I had originally wrote, my little message about what I wanted the podcast to be about today, hearing it back, the universe always punishes me whenever I do the right thing. I kind of realized I was using really big words like punishes and always and right, because everything can be reframed. And the black and white thinking is definitely something that I have struggled with a lot in my life and worked on a lot in therapy in the past. And the funny synchronicity that's happening right now is this like beautiful cardigan that Haley crocheted that is all black and white is staring at me in my face right now. It's just these
Ah,
black and white patches, and it's my
yeah.
favorite thing ever.
Hmm.
But the black and white thinking is not my favorite thing ever.
Well, it just means we've dropped into our survival brain.
Mm.
Right? We've lost the expansion, we've lost the connection, and we have gone from inspiration and creativity into survival.
Hmm. So we need to stop and recognize when that's happening and give our neural pathways different ways to frame what is happening. because my other example of I felt like I was doing something good for myself and then the universe, quote unquote, punished me. If I looked at a specific period of time, sure, there's a cause and effect. And I'm seeing it as like I did something and then the universe punished me. But then I'm not really looking at the whole fabric, because then what happened next was my spiritual awakening, which was actually the biggest gift of my life and so miraculous and beautiful in so many different ways. But if I just took that period of time of what happened before, I'm not looking at the whole picture. And then I'm just back in that black and white thinking of I did the right thing and then I got punished.
And it very much holds the energy of victim, right? The archetype of victim that is so sneaky. And it comes and it wraps its arms around us and gives us a big giant hug, and we don't even realize what's happening. And then there we are in our black and white thinking everything's against us and it's all our fault. And meanwhile, we just are like being squeezed by the victim archetype.
And it's crazy because you never want to be the victim. That's what we're trying to get away from. And we're trying to get away from our survival brain. But exactly what you said, it just sneaks up on us and we don't even realize it's happening. And the day that my friends died, or not the day, but one of the days following, this woman who I feel spiritually connected to just showed up at my house and feel like channeled some messages and just like disappeared into the winds. But what she said about death and suicide is that we love to make it about ourselves. We love to make it about, woe is me, my pain, I'm so sad, my loss, when really their decision was really about them. And it's kind of selfish for us to make it all about us and our feelings. And when really at the end of the day, if they were suffering so bad that they decided to make that choice, we need to honor that. We need to respect that. And we need to let them go.
That's beautiful wisdom.
Definitely. And it was definitely what I needed to hear that day and kind of helped me come out of my victim energy slightly.
Mm-hmm. There's another thread that's dropping in for you as well. And it's around, as you said, about grieving. And so, what I'm wondering is if you're not setting up a situation where it's not okay to grieve unless you have a reason, or and like a reason, like a personal, like you did something wrong. Like you are not allowed to just grieve for the sake of grieving. Like you lost two friends and they took their lives. That is tragic. The grief is a very valid emotion to feel in that. And then there's this part of you that needs to tack on a reason in order to be able to grieve. Like you're not allowed to just grieve because grieving is okay.
Yeah, I definitely have felt that. I think I know what you're saying. In my grieving recently, it has felt almost like not okay or shameful. And I think this part of the thread is perhaps more something that happened in my lineage or my ancestors, or yeah, just people beyond me and beyond my life, because I've always felt this shame around grief and expressing grievances and anger and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if you turn that on yourself, right, and make that a punishment, then maybe like you're trying to find these ways to make it be okay to grieve without feeling all these other things.
Right. Yeah, because then I'm overlooking the grief by focusing on, or maybe spending my energy feeling these other emotions of just, is it okay? Is it not okay? And just everything else that happens in the spiral of grief.
Mhm. And that is the thing about grief, right? There's no right way to grieve. There's just your way. And it's going to be messy. It's just the nature of grief.
Definitely. And in this grieving journey, I've definitely heard that grief is very personal to each person, but that we also need to hold space for it to come through because it's if we're not holding space for it, it can kind of sit quietly in the background, but that's not good either. Like we need to be intentionally allowing it to come through. Or I don't know if we need to, as you said, there's no right or wrong way to grieve, but that's just some of the messages that came through for me.
Hmm. Yeah, giving it a space, right? For when it wants to be with you. What if you imagine grief as just a person that wanted to come and sit and cry with you and feel some things and laugh about some memories and cry about some other things, lay down and scream and kick together and shake your head and say it's not fair. Whatever wants to happen, but anthropomorphizing grief to sit there with you, see if that makes anything different.
What comes up for me when you said that is I was imagining grieving with my friend's mom and his best friend because I feel like in this grief I felt very alone. I've tried so far 2 community healing spaces, and those were really helpful, but also I think grieving with the people that knew them specifically, people have given me the advice that would be really helpful, and I reached out to both of them, his best friend and his mom, and I just haven't had the heart to make that phone call to grieve with them or to make that date to go see them in person and to cry together, and I don't know what's stopping me. I think it's that same thread that was coming up for you of I just feel like shame and feel like it's not okay. And I don't know how to get past that.
Sometimes you just have to take a small step in the direction that you feel called to go. And maybe it's not something that you have to get past, my love. Maybe it's just something that you have to be inside of.
Yeah. Because the ancestral stuff around like grief and the shame and the repression of the negative emotions definitely has made it so that I really only feel safe in these really tougher feelings, like alone or with like, a therapist or someone like you who feels very safe and who's holding space for it. But outside of that, it feels very hard to share these emotions with other people.
Well, there's wisdom in that, my love, because this is a very vulnerable part of yourself. And you get to choose very wisely who you share it with. And it gets to be shared with people that have earned the right to be with you in this place. So I don't actually see that as something that is incorrect for you. I think there's a threshold that you could experiment with. But when it's this vulnerable and this deep, this isn't something that you just go and share with anybody. In my experience anyway.
That is true. And even if his best friend and his mom are probably also grieving heavily for the same person, I don't know them. I've never met them. And so I really appreciate what you said. It's just like, you don't have to go share this part of you with strangers. That's a lot. And maybe one day I'll feel ready, but just right now it feels too difficult.
Mhm. Yeah, when it's this raw, there's a level of holding, right? A level of like caring for this part of yourself and not requesting too much of it, right?
Yeah. Like, okay, Sophie, time to go out of your comfort zone. Like, this is not the time for that.
Yeah, you'll have many other opportunities to stretch that muscle. But there's wisdom in you that knows that this is not the time or the place for that.
Thank you. That's very validating.
How can I support you from here, sweetheart?
You've already helped me so much. You've given me a lot to think about. I think I will be journaling and dialoguing with my inner child after this to go back to the first thread of the bigger picture and how I can reframe this part of myself that is just so averse to change and feels like it's my fault and feel like I lose a part of myself whenever something big happens and changes. So I really appreciate this conversation. It was so wise and so insightful, and it gave me another place to grieve, which is amazing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're so welcome, my love. Thank you for being here and being vulnerable. There was one last thing when you were saying about losing a part of yourself that dropped in for you, and it's a reframe, right? When we are on this journey, part of this journey is that we are always losing parts of ourselves. We're always sacrificing some part of ourselves in devotion to a bigger truth. So the connection that you have in there is that losing yourself is a bad thing. But what if losing yourself was actually like the next iteration of your soul expansion? And so you lose these parts. Like when you were young, it wasn't that way. But now that you're grown, it is. And so there's a devotion that comes when those parts are willing to leave. It's like, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, that is so true. And I really appreciate that you said the part of, when I was little, that wasn't the case because little did I know I was in like a bigger, like 10 to 12-year cycle before things would really turn around for me and my soul would expand. So it just felt very heavy and long, drawn out period of my life where I was just so confused as to what happened to my love and my light. But now that, I've come into my spiritual awakening, I'm very in touch with my soul and my soul's journey. The changes are happening on much smaller time frames in terms of like soul expansion. And so you're right. I should reframe and hold the hope, hold the love, hold the light, despite the parts that may be dying, because that's the cycle of life.
Yeah, they're dying in devotion to you. Does this feel like an okay place to land today?
Yeah, this feels great. Or not great. It feels like a good place to land.
Thank you.
Thank you.